Parents of 480,000 children in the LA Unified School District are now waiting to see what our next guest and the teachers union that he leads does next. Our guest is Alex Caputo-Pearl. He is the president of United Teachers Los Angeles, whose 30,000 members have been working without a contract for more than a year now and been in talks for a new contract off and on for going on 2 years now. UTLA has set a deadline for a week from today, January 10th, saying they will strike if there is no deal. Alex Caputo-Pearl, welcome to AirTalk.
Thanks for having me, Kyle.
I do want to take you point by point through some of the issues that are at stake here, and I promise we will cover those issues in some depth. But so much of this dispute has been about process, who's made an offer, what qualifies as even an offer. So let's start there. Within the last hour, UTLA, your union, put out a statement saying that you reject the district's most recent so-called offer, but that you are ready to go back to the table on Monday. So let's be clear here. What are you hoping that we can accomplish, potentially, if there's a meeting on Monday?
Yeah, we have a bargaining team of classroom educators, counselors, et cetera, who have been trained in bargaining and who have been doing a great job. We got something over the holidays from the district that was pretty unclear, was an unorthodox way to make a proposal. We asked for clarity on that. They did not clarify it. So to the degree that we could understand what it was, we rejected it yesterday.
Alex, explain how it was that you felt that it was unorthodox. I think it's helpful to understand specifically.
Well, it was very unclear on many things. For example, Section 1.5 on class size, which allows the district to unilaterally raise class size, which parents and students and educators are very concerned about. It doesn't mention Section 1.5, even though that's been key, so that was strange that that's not in there anymore. It talked about $30 million being put towards class size and counselors, librarians, et cetera. And yet it's really a drop in the bucket for LAUSD. That's only 2% of the almost $2 billion reserve. That would put one additional staff person at only 30% of schools across LA. So the $30 million is not enough. And then it doesn't engage the other issues that we've brought to the table around limiting standardized testing so that we can have music and the arts and ethnic studies back in the curriculum, getting at more say for parents and educators around how school site budgets are spent, basic common sense charter accountability, that continues to not get at those issues. So it was it wasn't formatted like a proposal. It was just sort of unprofessional. We did consider it as a proposal because they asked us to, and we rejected that because it's just very similar to what they've put across the table so far.
Well, so we can go point by point through some of those issues, but you say there are issues on which the district is refusing to engage with you. And I think the district might say, if you look at the table that you're referencing, the union, your union has published the emails and a statement on their website. I've linked to it on my Twitter account if you want to read through the whole email chain. The district might say, on some of the points that you're saying we're not engaging with, the district is saying we are engaging with them. We are asking that we accept the fact finder recommendation. The fact finder was a neutral third party that came in to weigh in and potentially, map out a roadmap for resolving this dispute. And the fact finder said, we've got to drop a lot of issues. We've got to basically punt on a lot of these issues, tie them off, and focus on the big things being salaries, class sizes, and a few other things. The district might say, we are engaging with your proposal.
Well, certainly we know that there's going to have to be a compromise at the end of the day, and we understand that. But big ticket items like class size, which they have not put something satisfactory forward on, and staffing, like having enough nurses, librarians, counselors, as well as these issues that I mentioned of limiting standardized testing. You have a student who goes from kindergarten through sixth grade in LAUSD could take more than 100 standardized tests over the course of that time, and it just crowds out from instructional time, music, the arts, ethnic studies, et cetera. So that's a big issue for us. The school site decision making for parents and educators, being able to decide whether they want to hire whether they want to buy a class size reduction teacher or a librarian. These are big things. So while we understand that we need to compromise and some other issues might have to fall off the table, those are the ones that I described are pretty foundational, along with charter accountability.
Now, just to be clear, are you saying that we want the district to put, I mean, you've talked about the formatting of this deal and the proposal. This is the district, what the district said on December 19th. They put it into sort of a rough table form. And I take your point that it isn't in contract legalese. But just to be clear, are you asking them to formalize an offer, put it into specific contract language just because you mean to reject it anyway? I mean, maybe it's short on details, but the district has a couple of different times tried to say, we do want to deal with Section 1.5, this class size provision in the contract that you find very onerous. They've said that, but maybe it is in legalese. Is that the issue? Is it just that it's not in contract legalese, or is it something about the substance of the proposal?
No, Kyle, I just went through the substantive problems. The 1.5 is not included in the chart that they emailed to us on December 28th. The $30 million isn't enough. They're not engaging key issues that I went over. We do want to try to resolve this, which is why we put forward the idea of getting together on Monday and giving them an opportunity. We would like for them to come forward with a proposal. If they intend to delete Section 1.5 around class size, which would keep us from having over 45 students in secondary classrooms, over 35 students in fourth and fifth grade, which is atrocious. High 20s in lower elementary. If they want to propose that, they should bring it on Monday. We've been at this for 20 months. We're a little bit skeptical when we receive things that are called proposals but are very vague. PERB has issued 3 complaints against the district for unfair bargaining practices. So forgive us if we're a little bit skeptical, but we want to try to work it out, which is why we put forward Monday. And we really want the superintendent to stop trying to narrow this just to salary. There's so much discussion about salary, and yes, our members deserve a fair wage, and we're going to fight for that. But this is about so much more than salary. We've got to get to these issues of class size, staffing, curriculum, standardized testing, and charter accountability, et cetera.
Salary, one of the issues that I promise we'll dive into the specific contract issues point by point with my guest, Alex Caputo-Pearl, the president of United Teachers Los Angeles. Just to sort of bring in another voice to the conversation, yesterday when Superintendent Austin Buettner was on the show, he said the district has put themselves out there, but now it's UTLA's turn to respond. I'd like to play just a little tape of what he had to say.
If they don't like our language, please come forward with different language. But to just say you don't like our language, when in good faith we've suggested something along the lines of what the fact finder said, they have an obligation to come forward with their proposal to solve it, not just to say we don't like what you said.
There have been, you say that some of what they have put forward is vague, but it's also all out there. I guess the question is now, isn't the ball in your court now? The district has shown what it essentially means to offer.
Well, on Monday, we're going to get into that conversation, provided that they accept to get together on Monday. And like I said, we get it that, negotiations is give and take on both sides. I do want to say, though, that there is a threshold that the district needs to pass here. I mean, you've got an investment banker superintendent who has no education experience but lots of downsizing experience, who refuses to talk about privatization and charterization, which is undermining neighborhood public schools, and who is putting together a plan with national consultants that have privatized other school districts like Newark, Detroit, and others. We need, as a starting point, for the district they've got to start with proposals that actually indicate a basic willingness to stand up for district students, for the district itself, and for educators. And that hasn't happened yet. What we keep on getting is some crumbs thrown to us, but a continued agenda of withholding a historically high reserve, not really wanting to spend a lot out of that reserve, and moving on privatization plans that undermine neighborhood public schools. There is a basic threshold that the district has to cross here of showing a basic willingness to stand up for our district schools and students, and we haven't seen that yet.
Those issues, though, are issues on which the district has, from day one, said we don't want to bargain that into the contract. Charter school regulation, one of the major issues that you want, some sort of regulations around charter schools that share Los Angeles unified campuses. The district has just said we don't see this as part of the purview of the bargaining from the beginning. I mean, at some point, don't we have to give up the ghost on the idea that the contract is the place where this kind of regulation is going to get done, that you as a powerful political organization start lobbying the school board, organizing, creating political change as opposed to collective bargaining change around these issues?
Well, certainly if we have to end up striking, and we're going to do everything we can to avoid that, but if we have to end up striking, it will be about contractual issues that everyone agrees are legally bargainable issues, like some of the ones that I've gone over, class size, staffing, nurses, librarians, counselors, etc. But we do have to understand that everything that happens in LA is shaped by the mass privatization and charterization, and that includes bargaining, because you've got over $600 million per year that is drained out of the neighborhood public school system by the unregulated growth of charter schools. It is true, you're right, Kyle, that that's not a bargainable issue, but it does have to be dealt with because it is so tightly related to bargaining in terms of an annual drain out of the budget that is going to affect whether we can lower class size, whether we're going to be able to have librarians, nurses, et cetera. So we get the difference between bargainable issues and non-bargainable issues, but all of them have to be a part of this conversation. I will just raise also that what we've been looking for is a basic willingness on the part of the district to say, look, we're going to spend out of the reserve. We've got a close to $2 billion reserve in LAUSD, which is record-breaking. It's 25% of the budget, which is unheard of, in reserve, and it is just not fair to hold that in reserve and not spend it on our students, who are overwhelmingly low-income students, overwhelmingly students of color, who deserve equity and access and spending on our schools.
Just a comment that came in from Iris in Mar Vista that I'll just read to you. I'm an alumni of LAUSD, a current college student. Growing up, I found class sizes far too large and teachers were very frazzled due to high class size. Where do you think that the district should be putting its money into class size reduction? I mean, maybe for Iris, there were class sizes that were large, but on the other hand, the class sizes smaller than third grade are at 24. Should the money be put into later elementary grades? Should it be into middle school grades? Should it be into high school grades? Where do you want to see class size reduction?
Well, I mean, I look at my experience on this. I'm a parent of LAUSD kids. I've also got 22 years teaching experience in schools in South LA, which are some of the most impacted schools. And I've also been a community organizer around racial justice issues for decades. And there is no question that class size has an impact on our students in a way that few other issues do. So what the district needs to do is, for one thing, get rid of Section 1.5, which right now allows the district to unilaterally raise class sizes anytime it wants to.
Right.
That has to be a basic building block thing. What the district has said so far, they have said rhetorically that they will delete Section 1.5, but then in the next breath or in the next page of what they give us, they say that they essentially want to reconstruct 1.5 with 9 other conditions under which the district can unilaterally raise class size. That is first and foremost the thing that we need in order to cap class size so that we're not having 47 47 kids in a high school.
But then you have also said, in addition to that, that you want specific class size reductions in other grades. You don't want to just take away the district's ability to raise class sizes. You want to create a slower baseline of classes. What my question is where do you want those smaller class sizes? The district, this is a very expensive enterprise of class size reduction. Do you reduce them in elementary school, in middle school, high school? Where do you do this?
We need a scaffolded in effort to reduce class size across the board. We need it at all grade levels. It's unacceptable when you've got 27 kindergartners in a classroom, and it's not all at 24, like you said, Kyle. That is an incredible experience. When you've got 37, 38 in 4th and 5th grade, when you've got 50 in high school. So we've got to start the project of lowering class size across the board.
But if you're trying to lay down a marker for the district to come back with a better offer, the district is not going to be able to provide across the board class size reduction. I mean, I think that's what they would say. I mean, where do we set a priority here?
Well, they would be able to start on across the board class size reduction, and here's why. At the end of the 2017-2018 school year, the district's own financial documents reported a $1.86 billion reserve. Then, last month in December, the district's own latest budget documents confirmed that that reserve was actually growing and would be close to $2 billion by the end of 2018-19. Add to that the district's projections around a fiscal cliff have consistently been off. 3 years ago, they said that the 2018 reserve would be $105 million. They were off by $1.7 billion. That's not a small amount to be off by.
Right.
They consistently overproject on books and supplies funding that should be going to students.
So there's reason to mistrust their budget numbers. I will pick up on that point with you, sir, Alex Caputo-Pearl. And before I so rudely interrupted you, Alex, to go to break here, you were discussing the fact that there's a lot of reason to mistrust one of the foundational claims that the district makes here, that we can't afford the union's bargaining asks because there's a lot of reason to, A, distrust the district's financial projections of fiscal calamity, budget calamity coming down the pike, but also because the district has, as you point out, a $2 billion reserve. But of course, the district has said we mean to spend all of this reserve in order to keep our budget balanced. You can see that in the budget documents too. And in addition, I'd ask Alex, the district's put a lot of money behind its offer on salary, gradually increasing their offer for a salary increase for your members from 0 at the beginning of this negotiation to 2% for a long time, now up to almost 6%. The question that I'd have for you is, isn't that evidence that the district, contrary to what you're saying, is dipping into its reserve?
Well, as it should. There's been 27% increase in cost of living in LA. And so in order to recruit and retain educators teaching in some of the most challenging conditions in the state, of course we need movement on salary. But as I was saying, Kyle, at the end of 2017-18, LAUSD budget documents, $1.86 billion reserve. Last month in December, LAUSD budget documents saying that would grow to almost $2 billion in the coming months. In addition to that, they're consistently off in their projections of a fiscal cliff. 3 years ago, they said that the reserve at this time would be $105 million. That's off by $1.7 billion, which is not a small amount to be off by. They consistently overproject by hundreds of millions of dollars in their books and supplies spending, which means that money's going somewhere, but not in the classrooms. And finally, the district doesn't even follow up with charter schools that are co-located to get the amount of money that should appropriately be given to the district, which is more millions of dollars left on the table. In addition to that, locally, you've got the state of California with a $15 billion reserve, also a record-breaking reserve, and a state surplus that's projected to be another $15 billion on top of that. So the money is there for our kids. The question is just, are we going to have the political will to put it into our schools.
Let's bracket in your argument that maybe the district doesn't have a strong ability to forecast its own finances, but you've made a very central claim of your public relations and all of this, that the district is hoarding this $2 billion reserve. I mean, can you concede at least that the district isn't sitting on that money, that they're not locking it away and saying we won't spend it? I mean, that's been a very central claim that you've made, and I mean, they can point to budget documents and you can look at assigned balance numbers going up and up. It goes up to almost match that $2 billion reserve.
This is, they absolutely are holding on to a reserve inappropriately. This is straight out of billionaire Eli Broad's playbook of how you starve public school systems and make cuts and move more towards an unregulated charter environment, which is a privatized environment. This is straight out of playbooks that are easy to find online. So they're holding on to that reserve. Austin Buettner comes in with lots of experience on downsizing and cutting. He has no education experience. There's one reason you would bring someone in like that as superintendent, and that is to downsize and cut and privatize. So no, we're not backing away from that. What we want, and by the way, we're glad that they've agreed to meet on Monday. We're going to go in there and we're going to make every effort that we can to come to an agreement. But it has to be an agreement that starts from the very central place of investing in our existing neighborhood public schools. That is where it needs to start.
All right, KPCC AirTalk, that's the program we're listening to. Back with United Teachers Los Angeles President Alex Caputo-Pearl here on AirTalk on 89.3 KPCC. Alex, a columnist in the LA Times, Gustavo Arellano, wrote that acknowledging public sector unions have been under attack, a systematic attack really over the past few years. And Arellano writes that that's a bad thing. But he also says that United Teachers Los Angeles holding out for an incrementally larger raise of 6.5% is a bad look. He writes, what remains of Southern California's working class screamed, how about be happy you're getting any raise, let alone a retroactive one, in an era when family budgets are stretched to snapping. How do you respond to that?
Well, Arellano's article, unfortunately, had a bunch of errors and problems with it. But the main problem with it is that, just like Austin Buettner, he focuses on salary only. This struggle is about issues like 80% of our schools not having a full-time nurse. That's atrocious. And that is something that the parents and the public want teachers to be fighting for, and we will fight for that. One of the big issues here is just the way that Austin Buettner has been handling things. Yesterday is a good example. Yesterday he went out and bargained in the media, attempted to do that. He's attempted to stop teachers from talking to parents illegally about, he's attempted to unlawfully stop us from talking to parents. They've refused to share some key budget documents, even though he says that they are. And yesterday he put out 3 different pieces of paper, one to parents, one to educators, and one to the media, that were all inconsistent with each other about their position. This is not someone who is trying to get to an agreement here. So again, we put forward the idea of getting together on Monday. We're glad that the district's going to do that. But our members are frustrated, not just with class sizes of 50 and 80% of schools not having a full-time nurse. They're also frustrated with Austin Buettner handling bargaining like a downsizer does, which is disrespectfully to students, parents, and educators.
You've criticized Buettner, in fact, for being inconsistent. We've been talking about that today. But they have been consistent on this point about a 6% salary increase. They've gradually taken off a lot of the strings attached to it. Now it's pretty stripped down. There it is, 3% back pay going back to 2017, 3% ongoing, 6%. Is that insufficient?
Well, there's still conditions on it, from what we understand. And again, their proposal, or their so-called proposal last night, was unclear on this. But it seems that they're still trying to cut.
They've said in a number of places that they've wanted to remove those conditions, as the fact finder recommended.
No, it's actually very inconsistent, Kyle. And in their proposal that they emailed on September 28th, it's silent on whether they're going to try to cut health care for future employees, which would affect students and families. We've got to recruit and retain educators in a national teacher shortage. And you're not going to do that by having employees right now decide to cut future employees, future teachers' health care. So salary is going to remain on the table, but what we're not going to do is just agree on salary and drop the other things. So Ariana really misses the point. Now, all of this adds up to 98% of our members voting to authorize a strike because of these conditions in schools and because of the disrespect in the bargaining process. And parents are with us. Over 50,000 people got together and marched in downtown LA on December 15th. This is a movement to invest in our neighborhood public schools, and we're not backing away from that.
So on salary, I can't walk away from the salary issue without asking you, why are we still fighting about this? I mean, last year at this time, the district was offering 2%. You were at 7% to start this. We could have a deal today at 6%. Why are you not saying, great, done, sold, progress, now let's hammer out a deal on these other issues? I mean, why can't we stop fighting about this, declare a win? Isn't it a contradiction to say that we don't care so much about salary and yet we're still fighting about it? Like, can't you end the fight?
Because our members and parents and students want a comprehensive agreement that, yes, includes salary, but also includes class size, nurses, counselors, standardized testing, music, arts, ethnic studies, etc.
But you're essentially getting the deal that you wanted. I mean, yes, there are concessions about health care. Maybe you could argue those at the table, but in broad strokes, the deal has a lot of what you want.
We're going for a comprehensive agreement that saves and expands and invests in our neighborhood public schools, and that's way beyond salary.
You've called for a nurse in every LAUSD school, a librarian in every middle and high school, more counselors, deans, social workers in every secondary school. The district estimates that this would cost a total of more than $500 million, which is much more in their estimation. This comes from July, but a lot of this is in relation to your last best and final offer. I guess I'm just curious, how can the district, how can you expect the district to agree to demands that are so expensive?
So I've gone through the finances about the reserve, the reserve that's grown over the last 5 years,
right,
expected to grow again. I've gone over the books and supplies slush fund. I've gone over the district not charging charter schools to co-locate. So what the district can do is actually spend out of the money that I've just identified to get us going on real investment in our neighborhood public schools. And then, yes, do what Buettner has talked about, which is work together at the state level for additional funding. And let's have a comprehensive plan over the next 5 years that includes spending money that the district has now, right now, and approaching the state. Now, the problem with the way Austin Buettner is talking about state funding is that he's trying to just redirect to the state and forget about the money struggles here within LAUSD. We're not going to do that. But we do agree that, of course, we need to approach the state together. And Austin Buettner can do two things right now, today, to advance the fight at the state level. And by the way, as you know, California is 43rd out of 50 among the states in per pupil funding, which is criminal. And it's a racial justice issue in the sense that as the proportion of students of color has gone up in California, the per pupil spending has gone down. So this is educational justice and racial justice. The two things that Austin Buettner can do immediately around state funding are, number one, find a legislative sponsor to bring back the bill that we attempted to bring in Sacramento last year to close the carried interest loophole. This is where hedge fund managers like Austin Buettner, private equity people like Austin Buettner, get to inappropriately classify their income as capital gains and therefore be taxed less on it. That is Austin Buettner's set of colleagues. He could, in the snap of a finger, have a legislative sponsor and get the industry behind that, and that's $1 billion for public schools in California. The second thing he could do immediately on state funding today is initiate with Eli Broad, who he works very closely with, and other billionaires who say that they're concerned about schools, is initiate an effort to get wealthy commercial property owners to create a committee in support of Schools and Communities First. Schools and Communities First is going to be on the ballot. It is already qualified for November of 2020.
This is the property tax, the commercial property tax Prop 13 reform. If I want to get in one last question, Mr. Caputo-Pearl, and I'm apologize for cutting you off, but I want to ask, because the union has scoffed basically at claims that LAUSD is veering toward insolvency. A strike, you know, it would, no matter whether the district is headed to insolvency or not, it would still cost the district a lot of money in student attendance before it even enters its second day. I mean, it would cost, if it lasted more than 3 or 4 days, it could cost more than $100 million. I mean, after not a very long strike. I mean, this is just sort of back of the napkin math. Doesn't this sort of make it difficult in 30 or 40 seconds? Doesn't it make it difficult to call for a strike, because even if it lasts for a short time, it undercuts your own demands?
Well, just very quickly, that Prop 13 reform with Schools and Communities First is just to close the corporate loophole. It would only affect wealthy commercial property owners, not homeowners. Second thing is, we have been overwhelmed with the amount of support from parents and community organizations. And what people are saying overwhelmingly is, if it takes a disruption and inconvenience of a short period of time to right some wrongs that have lasted for decades and to make sure that the school system is not privatized, then it is going to be worth that inconvenience and disruption.
Right. United Teachers Los Angeles President Alex Caputo-Pearl on AirTalk on KPCC.